UFOs 2023. What's happening? On the 12th of February 2023, the airspace above Lake Huron, one of the 5 Great Lakes of North America, is suddenly closed. Shortly afterwards, the inhabitants of the area receive a strange report on their smartphones. A UFO has been sighted at a high altitude. Moments of silence followed, moments of tension and anguish, but also of curiosity for what could have happened shortly thereafter. Then, at one point, the rumble of military jets could be heard. The inhabitants of the area thus witnessed the military maneuvers of planes shooting down an unidentified flying object, a UFO. The object had an octagonal shape, and it was the 4th flying object that had been shot down in just a few days. After this series of unidentified objects being shot down, on February the 12th, US Air Force General Glenn Van Herk, the commander of North American airspace, said that he does not feel like ruling out the possibility that these objects are of alien origin, or, in any case, extraterrestrial, and would leave the last word on the matter to US intelligence experts. When specifically asked about the origin of the downed UFOs, Glenn Van Herk expressly said, "I will let the intelligence community and the counterintelligence community work on the objects and figure out their provenance or origin. I am not ruling anything out. In fact, at this point, I would say that we should all continue to evaluate any unknown threats or potential threats approaching North America in an attempt to identify them." Remember, this is the man who is the head of the North American Aerospace Defense Command and the Northern Command of the United States. Van Herk's comments and statements came during a Pentagon briefing on Sunday, February the 12th, after a US F-16 fighter jet shot down the octagonal-shaped object in the sky above Lake Huron on the US-Canadian border. Van Herk revealed very clearly that the military was not able to immediately determine the means or technology that allowed the 3 mysterious objects to fly, nor to determine not only their nature, but above all, their origin. There is a reason, underlines Van Herk, if they decided to define them as objects, and not airships or balloons. What is this reason? Can it be traced back only to the mysterious nature of such objects, or is there something more? Are the 3 unidentified flying objects shot down by the US military of extraterrestrial origin? We will try to answer these questions by first retracing the facts, thanks to the detailed reconstruction of the events masterfully carried out by ABC News. UFO question and the Pentagon report on UAPs. Since late January, 4 mysterious objects, including an alleged Chinese spy balloon, have been spotted in US and Canadian airspace, and were all subsequently shot down by the US military. Some details link the incidents, including that they all occurred within days of each other, but there are also key differences, with US officials saying that the objects, which didn't all fly at the same height or follow the same trajectory, did not resemble each other. Although the first balloon has been described as a Chinese reconnaissance device, the origins, composition and purpose of the other 3 objects have not been confirmed or understood by the US military. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer told ABC's This Week, ahead of the downing of the 4th and final, so far, object, that he was informed that 3 of them were balloons, effectively contradicting General Van Herk's words. While a US official attributed the increasing sightings to the strengthening of surveillance capabilities by the military, and not instead to a wave of new foreign objects flying over American airspace. Northern Command has improved and expanded the parameters of its radar capabilities so that it can see more than it could before, said this official interviewed by ABC, which preferred to keep its source anonymous. That's not to say that before we were blissfully ignorant, the official added, but there are a lot of things floating around, and now we're somehow more alert and ready to pick up on them. Incidentally, it is very interesting to note that the 4 sightings came very shortly after the release by the Pentagon of the congressional mandated 2021 report on the need for an assessment of UAPs. UAP, or Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, is no more than an official acronym for naming unidentified flying objects, previously known as UFOs. The results of the report were in fact disclosed on the 12th of January 2023, therefore a few days after the sighting of the first object, the alleged Chinese spy balloon. There are thousands of unconfirmed UAP sightings by US citizens every year, but until recently there was no formal procedure by which the US government could trace these sightings. This lack of interest in UAPs began to change in 2020 when the Pentagon officially released 3 videos taken from the cockpits of fighter jets showing unidentified objects moving in mysterious ways. In this regard, on March 2nd, 2023, a former US Navy pilot, Brian Graves, wrote an article in the newspaper Politico entitled "We Have a Real UFO Problem, and It's Not Balloons." The article sheds light on the growing concern of pilots and airmen about unidentified flying objects sighted in American airspace. Graves said he personally witnessed such mysterious objects while on duty. In 2015, he logged an object while aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. The object was flying systematically and regularly in their area of control, and Graves and his crew have never been able to explain its behavior. Graves is among a growing number of pilots who are pushing for legislative action to ensure proper reporting tools for these types of sightings. He believes it is vital to understand what is above our heads, both for national security reasons and for scientific reasons. The Office of Anomaly Resolution, part of the Department of Defense, is currently looking into the matter from a national security perspective. The recent shooting down of mysterious objects in the American sky has highlighted the seriousness of the problem in this regard, despite some erroneously insisting that they are simple balloons. What makes these mysterious flying objects particularly concerning is their ability to perform trajectories that are beyond our current technological and military knowledge. These objects can remain stationary, suspended in the air in high wind conditions, with no visible means of lift, and can reach speeds of up to 350 knots for many hours at a time. Behavior that, as former Navy pilot Brian Graves says, his plane could not even remotely perform. Graves and his crew used a multitude of advanced radar technologies and sensors on their aircraft to detect these objects within American airspace. Therefore, every time the sensors signaled the presence of a mysterious object in the sky, they reached it immediately and were able to ascertain not only that the object was exactly where it had been signaled by the radar, but also that it had a very unique behavior, performing maneuvers and trajectories unknown even to experienced US Air Force aviators. Despite the severity of the problem, Graves said that there are still many pilots who don't feel comfortable reporting these sightings. Graves hopes that this situation will change, and in this regard, he's pushing for legislative action that encourages reporting and ensures pilots and airmen feel comfortable coming forward. The fact that these mysterious flying objects may exhibit behaviors beyond the current understanding of technology is particularly concerning, and Graves, as well as others, stress the need for further investigation. Returning instead to the Pentagon report on UAPs mentioned earlier, the results of which were published in January 2023, the report included, directly from the Director of National Intelligence, 144 past sightings. Sightings made between 2004 and 2021 by Air Force pilots and US government officials. In total, there are about 500 sightings analysed in the report. Of these, almost 200 were irrelevant because it was ascertained that they were phenomena linked to the so-called aerial disorder, i.e. the flight of birds, balloons and meteorological objects in general, drones and plastic bags in the air. Other sightings instead referred to particular or unusual natural atmospheric phenomena, such as, for example, ice crystals and thermal fluctuations. Still others to secret military technologies developed by the United States or other nations. But other objects have not been explained, and they are the focus of scrutiny by the Pentagon, the intelligence agency, and NASA. In reality, the report tries in every way to debunk possible extraterrestrial theories. It is written several times that these objects are not alien spaceships, and that the study of these phenomena has another priority, namely to protect the USA from rivals, especially China. Yet, we know very well the government's position on this topic, and we know that it's very reluctant to go overboard in this regard. Among other things, speaking of China, even in Beijing there is a lot of talk this year about the UFO issue. In fact, in June 2022, China announced that its Sky Eye telescope would have picked up signals from alien civilizations. This news had ended up in a report by a state scientific journal in a newspaper of the Chinese Communist Party, causing the Chinese social network Weibo to explode. Shortly afterwards, the report was removed, taking away any possibility for us, as well as for the many curious about UFO theories, to delve into its content. Timeline of the events. The first object, the Chinese balloon. As mentioned, China was the protagonist of the first of the 4 flying objects sighted between January and February 2023, which was then shot down by the American government, arousing a huge international media outcry, becoming known as the now famous Chinese balloon. For the USA, the balloon was immediately identified as an espionage tool. Beijing replied that it was a simple meteorological measurement tool. Later, however, several military experts raised many doubts about both theories. It was said that the balloon flew too high to be a meteorological measurement tool, but also that it was too inaccurate to be useful as an intelligence tool, given and considering that the Chinese government and its military apparatus can see the USA better from the satellites they have, rather than with a balloon. That said, the Chinese balloon is the only object sighted and then recovered about which there are no doubts, either about how it was made, given that the debris was collected after it was shot down, nor about its origin, given that the Chinese admitted it was theirs. According to a senior military official interviewed by ABC, the balloon entered US airspace on January the 28th, north of the Aleutian Islands, Alaska. Photos of later sightings appear to show the aircraft as a huge white airship, about the size of 3 buses. On January the 30th, the aircraft entered Canadian airspace over the Northwest Territories, again according to the statement by the senior military official. The balloon then travelled south and re-entered US airspace over northern Idaho on January the 31st. The White House later said that President Joe Biden was informed that same day, for the first time, about the balloon. ABC confirms that the first civilian sighting was near Reed Point, Montana, on February the 1st. From there, the balloon then travelled southeast through South Dakota and Nebraska, US government officials said. The administration then said that on February the 1st, President Biden ordered for the first time that the balloon be shot down as soon as possible, that is, when there was no risk of causing civilian damage. At 11:15 a.m. on February the 4th, the balloon was intercepted over South Carolina at Lancaster as it continued to move southeast towards the coast. Around 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, footage captured the downing of the balloon over the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of South Carolina. The balloon was shot down in US airspace over US territorial waters by fighter jets assigned to the US Northern Command, as stated by the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. According to a senior US defense official, the balloon was hit by a missile fired from an F-22 fighter jet about 6 nautical miles off the coast of South Carolina. China's foreign ministry slammed the United States for shooting down the balloon, releasing a harsh statement. China expresses its strong dissatisfaction and protests against the use of force by the United States to attack a civilian unmanned airship. The Chinese ministry later stated that it had informed the United States in time that the balloon was nothing more than an airship for civilian use, and it entered the United States due to force majeure, which was completely accidental. On February the 6th, US Navy vessels scoured a vast area of debris caused by the downing of the Chinese balloon, with divers and cranes to recover the pieces. A senior military official said that the FBI took all recovered serviceable components into custody and then shipped them to its laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, for analysis and intelligence gathering. ABC News confirmed, according to 2 senior military officials, that the United States believed that the balloon had a self-destruct capability. The government and the military administration cannot explain why this function was not used, but probably to avert the risk of civilian damages, which would have exacerbated the conflict between the two great nations. On February the 8th, Pentagon General Pat Ryder revealed that China has conducted 4 balloon surveillance missions to sensitive sites inside US territory in recent years, but did not reveal exactly where or when the incidents occurred. Senior FBI officials who played a role in the material recovery operation from the downed Chinese balloon said on a conference call with reporters on February the 9th that the FBI team recovered only a small amount of the balloon and still does not have enough evidence to conclude what China's intent was. Only an extremely limited amount of the object has been recovered so far, which has been taken to the Quantico lab. However, a State Department official said that the Biden administration was considering taking action against China over the surveillance balloons sent over US soil. An official confirmed that the United States believes China has sent surveillance balloons over 40 countries, as previously reported by ABC News and other outlets. The downed balloon had multiple antennas, including an array likely capable of picking up and geolocating communications. It was equipped with solar arrays large enough to produce the energy needed to operate multiple active intelligence gathering sensors, a State Department official declared. Administration officials also revealed more information about China's previous balloon operations that have targeted the United States. In a televised interview, Secretary of Defense Austin said that the aircraft were spotted over parts of Florida and Texas. Earlier, a senior US official told ABC's chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz that incursions into US airspace had also occurred over Hawaii and off the coast of the continental US, specifically near Coronado, California, and Norfolk, Virginia, home to 2 of the largest naval bases in the country. US officials said that on February the 10th, the landing gear of the balloon was found in waters off South Carolina. An official told Martha Raddatz that it was found February the 9th and was largely intact. It has not yet been recovered, but will probably be done with a crane or with a winch from a ship. ABC News confirmed that US intelligence agencies were already tracking the spy balloon as it left China, on what they thought would be an eastward course towards Guam and Hawaii. Instead, it took an unexpected northward turn towards Alaska. The agencies looked into the possibility that weather conditions pushed the balloon off course, as was first reported by the Washington Post, which published statements from Beijing's foreign ministry, and that the Chinese therefore did not actually have the intention to cross into the United States. However, once it entered US airspace, it was found that the balloon intentionally flew over sensitive US sites. Following this, State Department spokesman Ned Price said that it didn't matter if the plane was blown off course, it was still a violation of US sovereignty. I won't comment on what the Chinese government may or may not have intended, but in some ways it doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant, Price said. It is irrelevant because it was a high-altitude surveillance balloon that violated our airspace. It violated international law. Sea conditions on February the 10th allowed diving and unmanned underwater vehicle activities and the recovery of additional debris from the seabed, Northern Command said, suggesting US officials may soon have more information about the object and its actual espionage capabilities. The second flying object, over Alaska. The sighting of the second object was announced to reporters by White House spokesman John Kirby, who revealed that it took place in the late evening of February the 9th. The object was detected by radar around 9 p.m. and was tracked by AWACS surveillance aircraft. According to the Pentagon, it was an object the size of a small car, traveling northeast across Alaska, and 2 F-35 fighter jets were immediately dispatched to identify it. The Federal Aviation Administration quickly restricted air travel in the area. After identification, the jets made another flight in the early morning hours of the following day, February the 10th, to try to learn more about the object. A few moments later, the object was shot down, as later revealed by Kirby himself. As reported by the Pentagon, one of the 2 F-22 Raptors at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage shot down the object with an AIM-9X Sidewinder missile at about 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time. This is the same type of warplane and weapon that was used to shoot down the Chinese surveillance balloon over the Atlantic Ocean on February the 4th. The shooting took place near the town of Deadhorse, Alaska, right on Prudhoe Bay, a census-designated place or a place inhabited for purely statistical reasons. Kirby added that before firing, the pilots of the 2 fighters ascertained whether the object was guided by a human being and only struck after establishing with absolute certainty that it was not. It was still difficult for the pilots to get much information from the object, he said, adding, "There is a limit on how much I can divulge on the matter." The object was described as cylindrical and silver grey and looked almost like it was floating rather than flying, said a US official interviewed by ABC. When asked if it was balloon-like, the official replied, "All I can say is that it didn't fly with any kind of propulsion, so if it can be called balloon-like, well, I wouldn't be so sure at this point." In fact, no one has been able or willing to describe the object in detail, and the only information that has been revealed is that the object was flying unmanned. The origin of the object and its purpose are not known. The order to shoot down the object was naturally given by President Biden, who was immediately informed of the incident. Kirby stated that Biden ordered the shooting down of the object to ensure the safety of civilian aircraft traveling at that altitude, as well as the fact that the object was at the mercy of the prevailing winds, which made its flight path somewhat unpredictable and therefore dangerous. For this reason, Kirby adds, the President could not take the risk of any civilian damages. In this regard, Kirby revealed that the object was travelling at a speed between 20 and 40 miles per hour at an altitude of 40,000 feet, and represented a reasonable threat to civilian flight safety, considering that commercial air traffic usually operates at an altitude of between 33,000 and 42,000 feet. Kirby also stated that the object flew over sensitive military sites. The US military has kept what they learned under wraps during their mission to retrieve the object over Alaskan sea ice. The Northern Military Command spoke of challenging Arctic weather conditions, including wind chill, snow, and limited daylight, that can hamper the search and recovery of the object and its debris. We still don't know who owns this item, Kirby revealed. The third object, over Canada. The North American Aerospace Defense Command detected a third object flying high above Alaskan territory late on February the 10th, Pentagon spokesman Ryder confirmed. Two US F-22 fighter jets monitored the object in flight, later joined by Canadian CF-18 and CP-140 aircraft as the object crossed into Canadian airspace. Following a phone call from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to President Biden, the latter authorized the shooting down of the new mysterious flying object, following the same methods used for the shooting down of the previous two. An AIM-9X Sidewinder missile fired from a US F-22 fighter. The two leaders authorized the shooting down of the object, which once again was unmanned and unidentified. We decided to shoot down the object out of an abundance of caution and on the recommendation of our respective militaries, the White House press office reported on a phone call between Trudeau and Biden. The White House also added that Biden and Trudeau have agreed to continue to coordinate closely to defend our airspace. The two leaders also stressed the importance of recovering the object to determine its purpose and origin. Trudeau tweeted, "Canadian and US planes were scrambled. An American F-22 successfully fired at the object." The object was shot down about 100 miles from the Canada-US border in central Yukon, Canadian Defence Minister Anita Anand told reporters at a press briefing on February the 11th. It appears to have been a small cylindrical object, flying at about 40,000 feet. These two objects don't look much like the Chinese balloon and are much smaller. However, we will not conclusively identify them until we recover the debris, which we are working on, a White House Security Council spokesman later told ABC News. This object, like the previous one, was at an altitude of 40,000 feet and was specifically shot down because it represented a risk to civil air traffic. Speaking of Canada, CTV News has heard that the Canadian government is following in the footsteps of the United States by launching a new report on the UAP phenomenon. The Sky Canada project will be managed by the Office of the Chief Science Advisor of Canada. Its 9-page presentation document can be easily consulted by going to the CTV News website. This Canadian project plans to collect information on UAPs, analyse and study them, and then make the final results public in the winter of 2023 or the spring of 2024. On the first page of the presentation, it asks, who is compiling and analysing UAP observations made by Canadians? The answer is expected to involve federal transportation officials, the Canadian Air Force, and others. The 9-page presentation is currently circulating within Canadian federal organisations. A government source with knowledge of the project provided the document to CTV News on condition of anonymity. Any emerging technology or unexplained phenomenon that is reported in the media is of interest to our office, a spokesperson for the Office of the Government Science Advisor told CTV News. Page 4 of the presentation outlines the rationale for the Sky Canada project. This includes supporting science to document rare natural phenomena, encouraging transparency and access to information to prevent conspiracy theories, and helping national security to prevent undetected intrusions. The document also lists preparations for collaboration between Canadian and US officials, given that, as already mentioned, both the Pentagon and NASA are studying UAPs. The official request, presented in Parliament by Larry Maguire, the Conservative MP from Brandon Souris in Manitoba, helped speed up the creation of a corresponding report to the US one to undertake a complete study on UAPs in Canada. The Chief Science Advisor's project is a clear signal sent to the government, the scientific community, the media and Parliament that the UAP issue can no longer be ignored, Maguire told CTV News. Maguire has publicly and repeatedly argued for such a program since May 2022. We should aim to find a plausible explanation for the vast majority of reports made, and it is through a precise and detailed scientific strategic plan that we can achieve this goal, which is why we need the Sky Canada project. The government needs to quickly and accurately determine what's in our skies. The fourth flying object, over Lake Huron. On the afternoon of February the 12th, another high-flying object was shot down over Lake Huron. 3 US officials confirmed to ABC News, marking the latest in a string of 4 objects to be sighted and later shot down by US military aircraft in just over 10 days. There are no indications of collateral damage. The object fell into the lake and the US and Canadian military are trying to recover it. The object was hit by an F-16 military fighter, which used an infrared-guided, short-range, Sidewinder air-to-air missile. A senior government official said Biden ordered the shooting down of the object out of an abundance of caution and on the recommendation of military leaders, as was the case with the previous objects. The official said that the object was picked up by radar over Montana on February the 11th and was seen again by radar over Wisconsin and Michigan on February the 12th. The object had an octagonal structure, was unmanned, and travelled at an altitude of approximately 20,000 feet. There were no indications regarding the object's ability to spy on or capture information from sensitive US sites, but the administration could not rule this out and preferred to bring it down safely. Secretary of Defense Austin dismissed the idea of a possible intelligence failure, given that for years hot air balloons and other small objects have soared over the US skies undetected. "No, it's the way the radars are used," he told NBC News. "They recently made some changes to our radars, opening their range, and they're analysing the data a little bit differently. We usually focus on things that move fast. If you want something to operate in those spaces, the Federal Aviation Administration should be notified," he added. The Canadian authorities announced on Thursday the 16th of February, therefore a few days after the shooting down of the object, that the search for debris from the object itself will be suspended. In an official statement, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police justified the suspension due to bad weather conditions and the low possibility of finding anything in Lake Huron, a lake about 23,000 square feet in size, parts of which can be up to 750 feet deep. After conducting an extensive search of the Lake Huron area with assistance from the Canadian Coast Guard and other national and international partners, the decision has been made to suspend the search due to several factors, including worsening weather conditions and the low probability of recovery, the RCMP added. Instead, search and recovery efforts continue in the Canadian territory of the Yukon for the third object shot down on Saturday the 11th of February, despite the adverse conditions. The conditions are extremely challenging and encompass a very large search area, spanning 3,000 square kilometers and consisting of rugged, mountainous terrain with a high level of snow cover and severe winter conditions, Canadian authorities said. This investigation is in its very early stages and will take time, the statement concluded. In this regard, until now there has been certain news only on the object of which we already know everything, namely the Chinese spy balloon. Indeed, the US military had much better luck recovering parts of the Chinese spy balloon, described as the size of 3 school buses, than US and Canadian authorities had with the next 3 UFOs. Key electronic mechanisms and sensors have been recovered, which are believed to have been intended for the collection of sensitive information. Crews have been able to recover significant debris from the site and an area of the Atlantic Ocean, including all identified priority sensors and electronics, as well as large sections of the structure itself. The American Armed Forces Northern Command said in a statement. Conversely, nothing is known about the other 3 objects, neither their origin nor their purpose. Is it possible that the governments of both countries know something they prefer not to reveal publicly? Given the historical record when it comes to UFO incidents, the question is legitimate. From Carter to Biden, statements by US presidents on UFOs. Over the past few weeks, President Joe Biden has faced strong pressure from lawmakers on both political sides, who have asked him for greater transparency regarding the incidents in the American skies. Therefore, the president decided to issue a formal statement on the Chinese spy balloon and the other 3 aerial objects shot down by the US military. Biden said the United States acted for abundance of caution when they shot down the 3 unidentified objects that were flying in North American airspace. The United States do not believe that the objects were connected to the first sighted object, the Chinese balloon, nor to any China surveillance program, nor that they were surveillance vehicles from other countries, said Biden. The most probable hypothesis is that these are aerostatic balloons linked to private companies or research institutes for the study of weather conditions or the conduct of scientific research. He said he ordered the demolition of the objects because of the dangers for civil commercial air traffic and because officials could not exclude the risk of surveillance of sensitive sites. Biden also said that he will not apologize for shooting down the Chinese balloon. The action, he said, served to send a clear message to China. The violation of our sovereignty is unacceptable. We will always act to protect our country, and we did just that. Speaking of presidential statements regarding UFOs or extraterrestrials, it is interesting to note that every time, during their election campaigns, the candidates for the presidency promise to make public government secrets on unidentified air phenomena, systematically, when they are elected, they forget their promises. Donald Trump has repeatedly admitted to having been informed on the UFO topic and said that the United States are observing extraterrestrials. However, he emphasized that he does not particularly believe people who claim to have seen UFOs. Barack Obama said in a late-night talk show that he asked for information on aliens after becoming president, and received the answer that the United States government did not keep aliens in laboratories, a theory supported by some ufologists. However, Obama confirmed the existence of objects in the sky that move in inexplicable ways. George W. Bush also declared during a well-known television talk show that he would not have revealed anything of what he had been told about UFOs and aliens while he was in office as president, not even to his daughter, who turned out to be very curious about the subject. Bill Clinton expressed interest in the phenomenon, affirming during a visit to Northern Ireland in 1996, "If the Air Force in the United States recovered alien bodies, it didn't even talk to me about it, and instead, I would like to know." In 1969, a year before being elected governor of Georgia, Jimmy Carter spoke of his close encounter with a bright object that hovered and went from blue to red, calling it the most absurd thing I have ever seen. Carter was among the first candidates for the presidency to promise the dissemination of any information on the subject. However, after the election of 1976, he changed course, stating that public dissemination could have had dangerous implications for defense and constitute a threat to national security. The government does not publish images of shot down UFOs. It is somewhat strange to note how the United States Defense Department published a photograph taken by the pilot of a U-2 spy plane that shows the Chinese surveillance aerostatic balloon in flight over the United States. But, at the same time, although the image provided unpublished details on the Chinese balloon, no photos or official images have ever been released of the next three mysterious flying objects that were subsequently shot down. What could the reason be? The Pentagon has never officially confirmed the presence of images of the incidents, but at the same time, it has no intention to release them to the public in the case they existed. Among other things, it seems unlikely that official images of the demolished objects do not exist, since the shooting maneuvers were the same for all four unidentified objects, and moreover, some limited information on the shape and size of the objects has been released. Therefore, if there are no images, as among other things a spokesperson for the Office of the Defense Secretary declared, how does the Pentagon or the government administration know the shape of the objects and their size? Did they trust the eyes of the pilots who were sent to shoot them down? In addition, is it possible that the order to demolish an object is given without having a detailed image of that object? This hypothesis seems unlikely. The government, as officially declared by President Biden, suspects that the three objects demolished were benign, or amateur or research balloons, rather than espionage tools sent by enemies. However, the three objects, unlike the Chinese balloon, have been classified as unidentified objects. This is what fuels in citizens the suspicion that in reality they could be something more than simple amateur balloons. Also because the weapons used to shoot down the objects are very expensive and very powerful. In short, not suitable for the elimination of a simple balloon. Some groups of users within social media hypothesize that the demolitions are part of a cover-up operation to hide the truth about the involvement of the United States in the sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipeline. Still others claim that the objects were alien space vehicles. The lack of the recovery of debris and the absence of images were also interpreted as part of an attempt by the government to hide the discoveries made in UFO matters. It is highly likely that the Pentagon has obtained images and videos of the objects before their demolition. In this regard, it is interesting to know that to investigate the second object more closely, the one spotted above Alaska, a pair of F-35 planes were launched. These aircraft were equipped with the EOTS, an electro-optical aiming system designed to provide high-definition images. Subsequently, the Pentagon said that unfortunately, the system was not able to capture images of the object. Just like the two F-16C planes of the 148th Wisconsin Hunting Fleet sent to shoot down the object, that were equipped with a Sniper ATP, a sophisticated aiming system. And according to the audio recordings of the pilots' conversations in the cockpits, captured by amateur radio enthusiasts, it is almost certain that the object was filmed during its demolition. However, no images or videos have been released by official organizations. An aura of mystery will surround these incidents until the Pentagon decides to release the images. Although the objects were probably benign, the lack of transparency from the Pentagon leaves open the window of possibility regarding the real nature of the UFOs first sighted and then demolished in the American skies in February 2023.